Welcome to Starting Five on the Five Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and the Five Reasons Sports. Today we're going to talk a little bit of Heat, talk Dolphins with Alex Dono later on a special episode. Typically we go Tuesdays and Thursdays, but we're going to do an episode of the Five Guys later today just to get into the Dolphin game. But again, today I'm going to do some Heat. So make sure you check out all the episodes of Five on the Floor and the Five on the Floor feed. We've done interviews, I think, with 13 different players that are on the roster. Those will be making it to the YouTube channel as well. Do want to tell you about the sponsors here before we get started. Also, our producer is Manny Chang. Our friends over at U Break Wheel Fix. You're going to get more flooding in South Florida. It's coming. Whether or not we get the full force of Milton or not, it's going across from the west coast of the state. Of course, hopefully everybody stays as safe as possible. This is not as big a deal as maybe your house getting blown down, but your car is going to get affected too by the flooding of South Florida. And we know that when you have damaged wheels, the place to go is U Break Wheel Fix. So use, again, the letter U at the start, ubreakwheelfix.com, or go to U Break Wheel Fix on Instagram, and they can take care of your damaged wheels for you. Also, they can do refinishing for you, polishing, much more at U Break Wheel Fix. And if you mention Five Reasons, you get 5.5% off your entire order. So they can handle just about everything for you. Again, it's 305-748-0112. That's 305-748-0112, based in North Miami over on 1848 Northeast 143rd Street. So again, mention Five Reasons with our friend Mark and his team at Ubreak Wheel Fix. Also check out Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. We've got a Monday night game coming up tonight. Put down the $5, play it. They will give you 50 more to play. That's as simple as it gets. 2 to 4 players, you can play them together. These are called lineups these days. It is legal in the state of Florida. And of course, the NBA will be starting soon. You'll be able to pair NBA players with NFL players. But for right now, pair them with MLB. Just play all NFL, college football, PGA, tennis. It's all there. PrizePicks.com. Use the code 5, F-I VE. All right, the Miami Heat have a scrimmage today at 6 o'clock. As of right now, it has not been canceled. Just to give you an update on some of the sports events in South Florida. Good morning, Daniel. The Panthers had a ring ceremony scheduled for today. That has been canceled. They're going to get their rings privately. I know a lot of Panther fans are disappointed. I saw Andy Slater put up that this is 0% chance of tropical storm winds today, and yet a 50% chance on Tuesday, but the home game Tuesday, the home opener for the Panthers has not been canceled to this point. So maybe a little bit premature on this, but people are preparing for the storm, and so they decided to cancel it tonight. The Heat, however, have not canceled the red, white, and pink game yet. So I will be down there. It is a scrimmage. We'll, of course, let you know on the channel if it does get canceled, if you're planning on heading down. Of course, first preseason game comes up this week. We'll see if that's affected as well. I was with the Heat in the Bahamas, and we did an episode on our Discord on Off the Floor. We hope you're subscribed there, where I went through some of my observations, but I'll get to some of those here as well. And of course, I mentioned we put up most of those interviews. We'll be putting up more. The latest one that's up, I believe, is the Arizona guys, which is Pelle Larson and Kashad Johnson. Also, we talked to Nasir Little on that one. We will be putting up the one with Khalil Ware a little bit later today, and Brady and I will be doing a full a full scrimmage preview. But I'll get into a little bit of the detail here. First thing, for those who haven't been to the scrimmage before and aren't aware of kind of how it works, Eric Spoelstra will give you a bit of a tell with his starting lineup, but then it won't stay that way. So we may see him pair together at the beginning if all are available. And as of this point, we haven't heard that anybody isn't. You'll see Bam, you'll see Jimmy, you'll see Tyler and Terry. He's leaning into that right now. And then Jovic likely the fifth. That's what we're anticipating. But the way that this works is the teams shift. So he'll have 2 of his assistants coach the teams. Maybe it'll be Chris Quinn. Maybe it won't be. Again, Chris has been elevated on the staff. So you could see Karan. You could see maybe Wayne Ellington gets a chance to coach one of the teams. Or Coach Dan, who, of course, coached the Summer League team to a championship. So they've got other coaches who could be involved in this today. But essentially, they're given a plan. There's a plan to mix the players. And they'll even mix not just the rotations, but between the 2 teams. So you'll see a lot of combinations against each other. You'll see some of the players take this somewhat seriously. Last year, you saw Jimmy Butler shooting left-handed threes. I kind of feel like he's going to be a little bit more serious this time around, just as he ended up being more serious for media day, even if that was caused in part by the fact that he was late and so he didn't have time to do his hair shaping and all that kind of stuff. But I do anticipate him being a little bit more serious tonight. And I do think this one is a little bit more interesting than some previous ones, simply because there are more young players in the mix who I think have a chance, excuse me, to get into the back end of the rotation this year. So, you talk about players who will not be available tonight. I would not anticipate Josh Richardson being there, although I did watch him in the Bahamas, and he was going through the majority of his shooting drills without any problems, including ball handling drills. It just is kind of the moving forward and then taking the step back for him because of the shoulder and managing that through. I don't expect any limitations for Rozier or Robinson. We didn't see any limitations in the Bahamas thus far. Expect them to go tonight. But again, I'm more interested beyond the starting lineup. Hello, Bryce. I'm more interested beyond the starting lineup. Thank you, King of Judah. Appreciate that. I'm more interested in kind of how he layers some of the young players. So yes, you will see Ware tonight. But I'm also curious to see Pelle Larson and what kind of combinations that they put him out there with, because I do think there's a chance for him to get into the back end of the rotation this year, particularly as Josh is kind of worked into things. I heard a lot of good things about him from behind the scenes. It's interesting. During camp, there were only three of us reporters in the Bahamas, which was myself, Ira, and Anthony. We were all there through Thursday. We're all talking to people about who looks good, who doesn't look good, etc. The group interviews, the players don't really talk a whole lot about that. But one guy who kept coming up when I did talk to people separately was Larson. That he came to camp very confident, and that again he could be ahead of schedule here. I know there was a lot of conversation about Ware. I saw Ware with Bam a lot in the Olympics. I saw Ware the Olympics. I'm sorry, not the Olympics. I talked to Bam about the Olympics in the Bahamas. I also saw Ware a lot with Haslam, and I think they were asked about that. The fact that it does seem like they're creating kind of a mentorship loop there, where again Bam was mentored by Haslam and others, and then kind of anointed the next guy by people like Bosch and Zoe and the other great bigs in the organization. Well, they're trying to put Ware under that same kind of family tree here. So to get him to kind of understand what heat culture is about, I haven't heard anything negative about him in camp thus far. Other players I want to see, Kashad Johnson. This isn't really his kind of game necessarily, because I kind of feel like he's a dirty work player who's going to look better in the actual preseason games that are a little bit more competitive. But he'll get a shot tonight to show. And then a couple of guys we've talked about for the for the interviews that we've done, during the interviews we've done. One, uh, as I mentioned, Nasir Little, and another Josh Christopher. Nasir Little has already been in the NBA for 5 years, even though it hasn't worked out. And although he's a former first-round pick and was at one time a top 5 prospect coming out of high school, I think he's accepted the whole "I'm a role player now. I'll just," as he said, this organization values the things I think are important. And right now, I think the things he thinks are important, again, are doing those kind of dirty work things, being a role guy, being additive to the players on the floor, not trying to take over, not trying to be who you were in high school. Josh Christopher, I think is in an intermediate position, because as we talked to him about when we had him on 5 on the floor, he was expected in summer league, or kind of became one of their go-to scorers late. That's not going to be the case with this team. With this team, and he has said he understands it, but this team he's going to expect to be sort of a high-end role player that, and to try to find a role with his athleticism and some of the other things that he can do to again be a person that they could put on the court for stretches. And he'll defend, and then again the 3-point shooting has to get a little bit better for both him and Little. But these are guys who have a chance to kind of fill pseudo 3-and-D roles, or sort of athletic defensive roles, with a little bit of offensive punch. Those roles may be there for them. But again, Larson's going to be competing for one. Josh Richardson is going to be competing for one. And Alec Burks in a different way, because he's more of a long-range shooter. And I did talk to Alec Burks. We'll see him tonight. I did talk to Alec Burks, and he said he's already been told to shoot more when he's on the floor. And I thought that would happen, because that typically happens with the shooters that join the Heat, guys like Wayne Ellington and others. So again, tonight, starting lineup, kind of curious how it starts, although I think we anticipate it's going to be Bam, Jovic, Butler, Hero, and Rozier. And then some of those kind of, I wouldn't call them fringe guys, but the guys who are either have the two ways, competing for the two ways, And then I know the one other thing that I think Heat fans want to see is the point guards. We probably see all of them in some capacity tonight. Zion Pullen, we saw in summer league, but also Isaiah Stevens, who currently has an Exhibit 10. I spoke to him. I mean, this guy is classic point guard. If they're looking for that off the bench to organize, that he's an Anthony Carter type point guard in the sense that, and I talked to him about this. Anthony Carter made the team back in 1999 because Pat Riley, from his office, watched AC's teams win every game in the open runs, and that's kind of what Isaiah Stevens' teams do. He just is he described himself. He wasn't comparing himself, but I said, of these point guards, what kind of style of point guard are you? And he called himself kind of a Chris Paul point guard. They don't have that on the roster otherwise, and that is why I think people are curious to see if he can take that two-way spot from Drew Smith. I've watched Drew Smith. He doesn't seem particularly limited by the uh, by what he dealt with last year. Obviously, what happened in Cleveland was unfortunate in tearing up his knee, but he's not a full go. So I probably would expect just to see Stevens and Pullen tonight, and again to see if Stevens can make an impression on the Heat. And then you mentioned King of Judah to see a little. I'm curious about the shot too. I mean, I watched him. The shot doesn't look broke. But he hasn't had great success with it over his 5 years in the NBA. And again, to be a role guy on this team and commit to the defensive things, but you're going to have to make some open threes off the triggers from others. That's what Highsmith learned to do to get into the rotation. Little and Christopher, that's a skill that they're going to have to show to the Heat. So anyway, that's some of the things I'm looking at tonight. Scrimmage starts at 6 o'clock. They're also doing an unveiling of the new arena, the Fireball. The new seating is not really an unveiling. You'll see it when you're there. I haven't gotten a chance to see it yet because they're going to show it to us all at 4 o'clock today. So we'll show everything that they've done down there. It does look like they finally made improvements they needed to make for a long time. I know you guys are going to joke that that's the only thing they didn't run back, but look, it's better than nothing. You go to the arena, you want to have a better experience. I do think that these theater lighting is going to be something that the fans are going to like quite a bit. If you're not familiar with it, Brooklyn, New York, and what used to be Staples Center in LA do the theater lighting, and it does enhance the show, so to speak. And also, we'll cover up the fact that Heat fans might be a little late or might be at the concession line or might be waiting 45 minutes at security. Everybody be safe. Thanks to Manny for producing. We'll have more Heat content on the channel the rest of the day. But again, just wanted to set the table. Heat scrimmage still on today. Panthers ring ceremony is off. We'll have more coverage of the start of their season tomorrow if it starts. And the Dolphins, of course, they win their game against New England. I'll take this one final one. 77. Ethan, after all this hand wringing this season, are you telling me the Heat have a chance to be a top 4 team in the East if healthy? I would say they have a chance. I wouldn't bet on it, but I think that we're overestimating some of the teams that are ahead of them. I think Milwaukee is flawed because of age at some of their core spots. I'm not entirely convinced Orlando's going to score enough. I think Indiana could get figured out a little bit for the opposite reason. I don't think they're going to defend enough. And Cleveland, I'm curious to see how Atkinson makes them better because essentially the roster is the same and there are flaws on that roster in terms of fit, just as there are on the Heat roster. So are you telling me that all of those teams are clearly better than Miami? I don't think so. Are you telling me that Miami's going to finish ahead of all of those teams to get the 4th spot? I wouldn't bet on it, but I think they've got a shot. So that's where I'll put it as the scrimmage starts tonight. We get into the preseason games. All right, subscribe to Off the Floor. We'll be doing more stage shows on there. Those are exclusive, where myself, Brady, Alex, Greg, others of the 5 Reasons Sports Network jump on there, take your questions. Thanks for joining today. Thanks again to Mandy for producing. I got to do a podcast with Brady. Have a good day, everybody.